Hello and welcome to Written Words. I'm Helen, and in this video we're going to be looking at points of view. We're going to explore what grammatical points of view are. We're going to look at some examples of writing in the first, second and third person point of view. And we're going to talk about what conjugating verbs means. So, who is telling the story? To identify the point of view of a story, you need to think about who is telling the story. And there are three possible points of view: the first person, the second person, and the third person. We're going to look at them in a different order. We're going to start with the third person because the third person point of view is the most common in fiction writing. The third person point of view is written from the point of view of he, she, it, they, or somebody who's named in the writing. In a piece of writing written in the third person point of view, the author is the person who knows everything, and the author tells us what the characters do and what they think. So the advantage of this point of view is that there is no limit to the amount of information the author can give us. And there are two versions of the third person point of view. There is the omniscient third person point of view, which is when the author can see everything and they tell us what all the characters do and think. They can see inside the mind of one character, but they can also see inside the minds of all the other characters and know what they're thinking. They know what's going on in the scene that's currently being described, but they also know what's going on in other things elsewhere as well. So the author is in possession of all that information, and in the omniscient third person point of view, they can share as much of that as they like. The one thing that you need to bear in mind if you're writing in this point of view is to keep everything clear for the reader. If you're describing lots of different characters' thoughts, that could get confusing. So deal with one person at a time. Make sure it's clear which character's thoughts you're telling us about and which time frame or which place you're in, so that it doesn't get too confusing for the reader. Describing lots of different characters' thoughts in the same scene can get quite tangled and can confuse the reader as they're trying to figure out who's thinking what. And this is something known as head hopping, which is to be avoided because it makes it difficult to read. Instead, treat each character one at a time so that the reader can fathom what's going on. And the third person limited is the opposite of that. The author still knows everything and can share whatever they want, but they focus on one particular character. So they follow that character around and you see what's going on through the eyes of that character, although that character is referred to as he or she or they or a name. One example of the third person point of view, and this is the third person limited point of view, is the Da Vinci Code by Dan Brown. And the first chapter of the book begins like this. Robert Langdon awoke slowly. A telephone was ringing in the darkness, a tinny, unfamiliar ring. He fumbled for the bedside lamp and turned it on. Squinting at his surroundings, he saw a plush Renaissance bedroom with Louis XVI furniture, hand-frescoed walls, and a colossal mahogany four-poster bed. So we know this is third-person narrative because we're given a name, Robert Langdon. Robert Langdon awoke slowly. And then after that, he's referred to as he. He fumbled for the bedside lamp. And he squinted at his surroundings. he saw a plush Renaissance bedroom. So we're given pronouns that tell us that this is the third person. He, his, and his name, Robert Langdon. The first person is also quite popular in fiction. And the first person is written from the point of view of I or we. So it's a more intimate, personal format. A bit like a diary or a witness statement, or somebody telling you what they did, what they saw, what they thought. So the narrator is giving you their personal experiences. Even if that narrator is a fictitious character, they're telling us their personal thoughts and experiences. But because this is just one person telling us things, and human beings are flawed, this information that this person is giving us could be biased or unreliable, what is known as an unreliable narrator. And as a result, we only see things from that person's point of view. However, this can be a great tool for storytelling because it adds an extra layer of intrigue and interest and mystery, which makes the story more engaging because we're trying to fathom whether what the narrator is telling us is accurate or not. A first-person narrator can be either a central character in the story and directly involved in the action, or they can be a peripheral character, so they can just be a narrator observing what's going on, but not fully taking part in the action itself. So here is an example of first-person point of view, and this is a first-person narrator who is a central character in the story, and this is from Moby Dick by Herman Melville. Call me Ishmael. Some years ago, never mind how long precisely, having little or no money in my purse and nothing particular to interest me on shore, I thought I would sail about a little and see the watery part of the world. It is a way I have of driving off the spleen and regulating the circulation. We know that this is first-person narration because the narrator uses the pronoun I. He says, call me Ishmael. He says, I thought I would sail about a little. It is a way I have of driving off the spleen. So this book is like a memoir. It's a record of Ishmael's experiences, his voyage on the sea. It's as if he's written a diary of his travels, explaining his own personal experiences. So what we get in the book is his viewpoint, his opinions, what he thought of things, what he saw. We don't find out what other characters see and think unless they tell him directly. The whole of the narrative is through Ishmael's eyes. And finally, we have second-person narration. This is the least commonly used in fiction, although it does have some other uses. In storytelling, it can be difficult to use and it can be difficult to keep going for the length of a story. It is useful, though, for giving instructions. So it's often found in how-to books or self-help books or information. For example, in a manual telling you how to use a piece of equipment, it may well be written in the second person. And it also lends itself to the choose-your-own-adventure format, the kind of books where you are the main character and you have to make the decisions. So the book will ask you, what would you do next? Which way would you go? Would you choose left or would you choose right? Would you take the green bottle or would you take the blue one? And so on. A very nice example of the second person in literature is the poem If by Rudyard Kipling. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too. If you can wait and not be tired by waiting, or being lied about, don't deal in lies, or being hated, don't give way to hating, and yet don't look too good, nor talk too wise. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster, and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken, twisted by knaves to make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken, and stoop and build 'em up with worn-out tools. If you can make one heap of all your winnings, and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss, and lose and start again at your beginnings, and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there is nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on, if you can talk with crowds and keep your virtue, or walk with kings nor lose the common touch, if neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if all men count with you but none too much, if you can fill the unforgiving minute with 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it, and, which is more, you'll be a man, my son. So the clue that tells us that this is in the second person is the use of the pronoun you, which is used in almost every line in this poem. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. So as we read it, it sounds like instructions or advice. It's advice from a father to a son. It's like a manual to living well. So now that we've had a look at 3 examples, one of the third person, one of the first person, and one of the second person, take a look at some other pieces of writing. Compare different styles of writing. Compare fiction and non-fiction. Look at newspaper articles or recipes or essays or any piece of writing and see if you can identify which point of view it's written in. And now for our language focus, let's have a look at where this term first, second and third person comes from. These terms come from the way we organise pronouns and verbs in the English language. A pronoun is a word which refers to a person or people. The person who is doing the action or the person who is having the action done to them is referred to by either a name, a noun, or a pronoun. And then the action itself we express in English using something called a verb. So pronouns and verbs go together. But depending on which pronoun we use, we change the verb a little. In the singular, the first person pronoun is I. The second person pronoun is you. And the third person pronoun can be he, she, it. Or instead of using a pronoun, we could use a name. In the plural, the first person pronoun is we. The second person pronoun is you again, but this time it's you referring to lots of people. And the third person pronoun is they. So if we put a verb with that, let's use the verb to be, and let's have a look at how the verb changes depending on what the pronoun is that goes with it. If we use the first person singular pronoun, we say I am. If we use the second person singular pronoun, we say you are. The third person is he is, or she is, or it is, or a name, for example, John is. In the plural, the first person would be we are. The second person would be you are, and the third person would be they are. Or if we're using names, John and Peter are. In the past tense, we change the verb a little as well. So we would say I was, you were, he was, she was, it was, we were, you were, or they were. So there aren't quite as many changes in the past tense as in the present tense, but there are differences between the form of the verb that we use with each pronoun. This is how we would change the verb to match the pronouns for the verb give. I give, you give, he gives, she gives, it gives, John gives, we give, you give, they give. So sometimes we have give and sometimes we have gives, depending on who it is doing the giving. But in the past tense, this verb doesn't change according to the pronouns. I gave, you gave, he gave, she gave, we gave, you gave, they gave. And now for our writing prompt. For this prompt, we're going to do a little bit of experimenting. First of all, write just one paragraph describing something that happened to you this week. It could be a major life-changing event, or it could be something very ordinary, just something you thought, or a meal you ate, or a journey you went on, anything that happened to you this week. Write it in the first person. So, I did this, I went there, I thought this, and so on. Then when you've done that, imagine that this event happened to someone else and rewrite the scene in the third person. So you can give the person a name if you like, and you can say John did this, John said that, John thought this, or you don't have to name them, you can just use he, she, they, or whichever pronoun suits the person you've chosen. Then, when you have your two finished paragraphs, compare them. Do they feel any different? Do you prefer one version over the other? And why? If they are different, what is it that makes them feel different? The worksheet that goes with this lesson contains everything we've talked about in the video, and it also includes some suggestions to help you explore this topic further if you're interested. There's some more information to read on points of view, and I've given a couple of extra examples of types of narration that we haven't looked at examples of. So there is an example of the first person peripheral narrator and also the third person multiple point of view as well. Thank you very much for joining me in this lesson. I look forward to seeing you in the next one, and in the meantime, happy writing.